Alrighty everyone, welcome back. Happy Thursday everybody. It is now July 27th of 2023, and as we inch closer to the Ahsoka series on August 23rd, which by the way, it's going to have a 2-episode premiere, a lot of people have been really kind of a little skeptical about why they are premiering with a 2-episode format. People are beginning to think that maybe the first 2 are going to be very boring or just long dreaded with no real substance. We'll have to wait and see exactly why they're doing that 2-episode premiere. And until then, it's going to be quite interesting. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into the subject, shall we? Now, we know that Bob Iger is panicking. He's really trying to lie to the general public that he has no concerns about Disney, regardless of the stock taking a very big downturn. We've been witnessing this for the past number of months now. It's not looking good for them, not looking good for the theme parks, and especially for a lot of their releases lately into the theaters. There's been a lot of failures, such as with Elemental, The Little Mermaid, Indiana Jones 5, and the up-and-coming Snow White 2024. And by the way, let's not forget about the Marvels, which by the way may very well be getting delayed from November until 2024. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, on top of this, what's actually quite interesting is what Iger initiated that is a result of his cost containment plan and how it does impact the number of Star Wars announcements that will take place at D23 in September and the various earnings calls throughout 2024. Let's discuss. Now, right now, Bob Iger is making several adjustments over at Disney just after his cost containment plan went active. However, one major development is that Bob Iger recently canceled multiple Star Wars projects as part of his cost containment plan. One major development coming out of this is that Iger reportedly canceled 7 Star Wars movies, some of which were even intended to release on Disney+, others of which in theaters. First off, Iger canceled an entire trilogy that was in limbo mode that was being led by Kathleen Kennedy, which was going to be a small-scale High Republic trilogy that was going to be completely based on the High Republic books and comics to focus on the tensions between the Jedi and the Nile. These films were completely axed as part of his cost containment plan to focus more on quality-driven Star Wars movies. This trilogy was also set to focus on less battles and wars and more so on natural disasters. 2 other films that were canceled by Iger were going to be spin-off movies of Rian Johnson's dormant Star Wars trilogy that has now been axed completely. Now, these were also going to be announced at this year's D23 for new Star Wars films that take place in a totally different galaxy. So guys, let me stop right here for one moment. Now, the problem about this is that why would you announce spin-off films of Rian Johnson's trilogy that was going to be based in a different galaxy, you must ask? Well, that has a lot to do with the fact that Johnson's trilogy is no more. Regardless of what they tell you, it's not happening. And this is something that Kathleen Kennedy got very offended about when a correspondent asked her about this at Celebration, as well as Kevin Feige's movie about shelving projects and how she says, well, we never shelve projects, we just keep them on the back burner and keep them, pretty much locked up away for the years to come until we want to bring those stories back to life again. In other words, they're canceled. She just does not want to use that word. It's true. Now, the thing about Bob Iger here is that, alright, I guess he's somewhat making a good call here, but this doesn't necessarily make him a good CEO, even though he's canceling out Kathleen Kennedy-driven projects. And there's more to this that we're going to talk about in a second, but this, I believe, just goes to show you a sign of defeat and how they were about to oversaturate Star Wars. So, we're going to talk about why there were so many Star Wars movies that were actually on the slate that they were about to unveil at D23 and announce throughout various earnings calls set for 2024. Now, a lot of this has to do with the fact that they wanted to bring Star Wars up to a Marvel Cinematic Universe level. Now, on top of that, the other 2 were based in the Mandoverse era that were also cancelled. The original plan by Iger was to release 3 Star Wars films a year, which is why there were so many. The strategy was to have a mixture of movies releasing in theaters and on Disney+. They wanted to essentially bring Star Wars up to a Marvel status, a frequency of films coming out. This is all forever done now. The new plan to have only 2 films, of course, released for 2026 remains active, followed by 1 film a year. And even that may change if things get worse for Disney. So far, the Rey film, Dawn of the Jedi, and Filoni's movie remain intact, with 2 Old Republic films still in the works now, as a 3rd one was axed, no longer making it into a trilogy. Kathleen Kennedy is said to be having big arguments about the cancellation of her High Republic trilogy, as that has now been finalized to never happen or see the light of day. Now guys, I've always said this several times, the High Republic is a bore fest. I've read every single book, every single comic to get a true judgment about this, and they're not Star Wars in my eyes. I did the job for a lot of people out there, in case you guys have not read those books and comics. And let me just say one thing here, is that it feels like it alienates George Lucas's Star Wars. It feels like it is something from a different universe, something that just uses the Star Wars label and slapping it on to something completely different just to call it Star Wars. That's the best way I could really describe it. I mean, you don't really have the Sith, you have the Nile, you don't really have traditional characters in the sense that are representative of George Lucas's outlook on the franchise. It's very different. It's very Kathleen Kennedy-esque is the best way I could really describe it. And that's exactly why the High Republic is a thing for the Acolyte series, because this is a 100% creative controlled thing by Kathleen Kennedy. Not a big surprise there. You know, we also have the fact that The Acolyte is getting a spin-off still to this day, a spin-off series that's gonna feature Brie Larson as a character named Maeve. We've been talking about that on and off as well. Hopefully that gets axed as well if things get worse over at Disney. So here's the thing about this. The writer's strikes are not making this any easier. And I think that you're going to see more delays, even for the Rey film, the Filoni movie, and James Mangold's movie, and that's going to be shifted until the later portion of this decade. It's come to a point where it's gotten so ridiculous, where it's so far ahead in the future, and it's just going to keep getting worse, to the point where it's like, alright, let's just raise our hands and say that these movies are not even going to happen. Not that I want a Rey movie, not that I want James Mangold to take part in a Star Wars film after what happened with Indy 5, because it's all about changing the true nature of the Jedi. Even Mangold said that his movie is not going to mention Jedi at all, even though it's going to be in the title. And that really just goes to show you how they're really trying to disconnect and shift away from the Jedi and the Sith and everything that really brought Star Wars into its success. So anyway guys, I would love to hear your take on everything about Bob Iger's call here about his cost containment plan, and what it really means for the future moving onwards for the franchise. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.